Every program requires a proper framework for its smooth conduct and success. Likewise, educational programs also need a framework, and that framework is known as the curriculum. Curriculum is the backbone of every educational program. Without curriculum, we cannot achieve any educational goals. So, curriculum acts as the pathway towards the goal. Different educationalists define curriculum in different ways. One of the famous definition is given by Cunningham. According to him, curriculum is a tool in the hands of an artist to mold his materials in accordance with his ideal in his studio. Here, the artist is the teacher, studio is the classroom, and the material is the student. So, by using curriculum, teachers can reform the behavior of the student in such a way that lead to achieve a desirable goal in life. We can say that curriculum is the heart of schooling because curriculum fulfills the objectives of the school as well as the educational process. Curriculum is a key element in education because it plays a vital role in preparing quality learners. Curriculum gives the opportunity to develop thinking skills in the students and helps to learn about the emerging trends in education. A good curriculum helps a learner for his personal development and also for acquisition of knowledge that they need to apply in their educational as well as life activities. Curricular adaptation is a dynamic process that modifies and adapts the existing educational program to meet the learner requirement of a diverse learner. The changes or adaptations in the curriculum provide equal opportunity for a special needs student to access the general education curriculum. Two terms related to curriculum adaptation in inclusive education is accommodation and modification. Accommodation refers to create an alternative environment, curriculum format or equipment which helps an individual with a disability to gain access of the curricular content. Accommodations change the way that students access the general curriculum but do not fundamentally change the course content, standard or expectations. In other words, accommodation change how a student learn but not change what they learn. Accommodation can make changes in the instructional strategies, examination, procedures, time, scheduling, classroom environment, equipment, and architecture of the classroom. These changes enable children with special needs to access the general curriculum and participate actively in the classroom and in the school activities. Some examples for accommodation are large print textbook, additional time for completing assignments, use of teaching strategies, for example, peer tutoring, cooperative learning, provide scribes in exams, provide a distraction-free space, provide hands-on activities, preferential seating such as seating in the front row or near the teacher, provide additional time in exams, provide frequent rest breaks, conduct oral testing, provide assistive devices. Modifications are any adaptations made to the curriculum which alter the curricular objectives. It is based on the individual needs of the students. These modifications provide the special needs student to a meaningful and productive learning experience. Modifications include curricular changes in the instructional level, content, and the performance criteria for the students. These changes change what the student has to learn and allow students to access the content at different level. Some examples of curriculum modifications are reduction of the learning content, alternate assessments, reduce the complexity of the learning material, alternate the way of testing the knowledge, alternate books or materials on the same topic. Accommodation provide the child an equal access to learning. Modification provide learning experiences based on individual need and abilities. Accommodation do not change the instructional level or content. Modification change the instructional level or content. Accommodation provide student an equal opportunity to explain what is known, whereas modification help a student to achieve a targeted skill based on his strength and abilities. Accommodation do not change the information to be learned, whereas modification change or set a lower expectation. Accommodation grading is the same. In modification, grading is different. Differentiated curriculum is one that is individualized to meet the diverse needs of students in general education classroom. The differentiation can be done in the areas of content, process, and products. Simplify the content based on the learning ability of the learner. For example, for a child with severe intellectual disability, make the curriculum more functional. Instead of learning science or social science, teach them daily living skill. For that, the teacher has to prepare an individual curriculum for the child. Regarding process, teacher may use different types of instructional strategies, involve students in group activities, allow children to learn with his pace, provide multisensory learning experiences, and encourage students to involve in creative thinking. Regarding product, encourage students to apply the learned knowledge beyond the classrooms. Some students can give best results while work alone, but some need group assistance. In recent years, more attention is given to social inclusion of individuals with disabilities. Inclusive education is the first step to start social inclusion. In inclusive education, all students, without considering their abilities, enrolled in the same classroom and access all the facilities and actively participated in all aspects of school life. An inclusive classroom is a place of diversity. It includes children with various learning abilities and needs. Our education system follows a subject-centered approach in which the curriculum gets central position. A curriculum includes goals, content, teaching materials, assessment, and evaluation methods. The common curriculum restricts the level of inclusion of diversified learners in the classroom. In order to overcome such situation, a flexible curriculum or adapted curriculum is needed in inclusive classroom which is child oriented. Adapted general curriculum helps children with special needs to access the inclusive learning environment. According to Cross, learning accessibility is the right to every children and inclusion is the prime objective of our society. The use of adaptations is necessary to meet the individual needs. Studies in the area of curriculum adaptations proven that it is very effective for the academic inclusion of children with disabilities. Makbul and Hariharan conducted a study on curriculum adaptations in science for students with intellectual disability. According to them, curriculum adaptations are potential and provide access to information and to learning to children with intellectual disabilities. Kurth and Keegan has done a research on development and use of curricular adaptations for students receiving special education services. They found that educator made curriculum adaptations are good in facilitating learning in children with special education needs. Lee investigated the impact of curriculum modifications on access to the general education curriculum for students with disabilities. Findings indicated that there was curriculum modifications provided to the students were engaged in more academic related responses and fewer competing behaviors, and teachers were engaged in fewer classroom management activities. Curriculum adaptation have been identified as an important factor to access and make progress in the general education curriculum. They provide individualized learning, facilitate the opportunity to learn with his pace, increase the chances of group activities and through which attain proper social skills, provide adapted materials for the students, provide access to general education for exceptional children by means of accommodation and modifications, provide a least restrictive environment and helps to make inclusion a reality. There are different steps in curricular adaptations. It is also known as the process of curriculum adaptation. The various steps are: determine the need for adaptation, identify the elements requiring the adaptation, select teaching strategies and behavior management techniques, implement curricular adaptations and monitor the progress of adaptation, fade the adaptation. The first step in curriculum adaptation is to determine the need for curriculum adaptation. It is the responsibility of the classroom teacher to identify whether curricular adaptation is needed in her classroom. For that, a teacher should know his or her students in terms of their academic ability, learning readiness, interest, and their previous performances. The next step is to identify the elements required in adaptation. To select the elements, teacher has to observe the performance of the students and evaluate the area where they need adaptation. Based on the results of the observation and evaluation, identify and define the problem to be addressed by the curricular adaptation. Content adaptations are made only when the student has a significant cognitive and sensory impairments and the general curriculum is inappropriate for him. The next step is to prepare a plan for curricular adaptation in which the objectives are mentioned clearly. Select the teaching strategies for teaching the specific skills. Teaching strategies are the specific techniques that help learners to learn their task easily. Most commonly used teaching strategies that can be used in an inclusive classroom is cooperative learning and peer intervention strategies. Students with cognitive disabilities and severe disabilities may have behavior problems which distract the entire classroom. So, the teacher should select an appropriate behavior management technique for the selected students. There are positive behavior management techniques and punishment techniques. The teacher can select a suitable technique according to the behavior of the child. Once the curricular adaptation plan is prepared, the next step is implementation of the plan. Inform the students and parents about the adaptation. Adapted materials are used for teaching the skills. Regular monitoring is needed and it will help the teacher to know about the success of the adaptation. As the adaptation is implemented, the teacher should evaluate its effect to determine whether the desired outcomes are being achieved or any modification needed. Once the student has learned the necessary skill, the adaptation should be faded. For some students, an adaptation may be required for several months, while for others, it may be maintained for years. The adaptation should not be removed until the student possesses the skills and strategies to learn and complete the task independently. The types of curricular adaptations are based on size, time, level of support, input, participation, difficulty, output, alternate goals, functional curriculum. Now let us discuss one by one. The first type is based on the size of the content. Adapt the number of items that the learner is expected to learn. For example, reduce the number of words in a unit the learner must learn at one time. The next is the adaptation based on the time. Adapt the time allotted for learning. For example, provide more time to complete an assignment or extended time in examination. The third type is based on the level of support. Increase the amount of support provided by the teacher to learn a task. For example, the teacher may spend more time with the student or link him with peers through peer tutoring or cooperative learning strategies. The next type is based on the type and intensity of the input we are provided. Adapt the way instruction is delivered. For example, provide hands-on experiences using visual aids and providing multisensory learning. The next one is participation. This type is based on the extent of participation of the learners. Ensure active participation of learners in learning activities. For example, make them part of cooperative groups. The next is based on the difficulty level of the instruction or task. Simplify the task, modify the procedures which a learner can follow. For example, use task analysis. Break down the main task into small sub-steps. The next is output. Adapt the outcome of learning. That means how the learner is responding or completes his task. Example, allow verbal responses rather than in writing or use alternate testing. The next is alternate goals. Adapt the goals or outcome expectations for students with moderate and severe disabilities. The next one is functional curriculum. This is for learners with severe disabilities. In this, the content of the curriculum should be made functional. For example, in language class, the other students have the goal of reading the lesson, while the goal for the selected learner is to read only the selected word. The factors are attitude of the general class teacher, extent of support from resource teacher, materials, strategies and techniques, environment support, parent support and peer support. General education teacher is the responsible person to adapt and implement the curriculum for special needs students in inclusive classrooms. So, their attitude towards children with low learning abilities and effectiveness of curriculum adaptation is important. The next one is support from resource teacher. A resource teacher's support is essential in planning and implementing curricular adaptation program. A resource teacher is a specially trained teacher for teaching and training diverse learners. The next factor is material. Adapted materials are needed for the successful implementation of the program. Materials should be modified according to the learning needs of the student. Some examples of adapted materials are large print for low vision children and audiobooks for hearing impaired children. Teachers should use specific strategies and techniques in the classroom. This may include individualized education training, peer teaching interventions, cooperative learning strategies, and techniques like task analysis, prompting, and reinforcement techniques. The next factor is environmental support. A supported or modified environment is needed for a successful adaptation. The environmental support not only include the removal of physical barriers but also a simple modification in the classroom like change the seat of the student to more comfortable area. Parents' support is also a factor for curriculum adaptation. The attitude of the parent and the extent of support provided by them is very essential component of educational excellence of that child with special needs. Peer support is also an essential component of curriculum adaptation process. They can help with each other while involving in small group activities. Sometimes the students link each other with peer tutoring. In a general education classroom, the normal children should act as a good role model for other special need children in education as well as in social skills. There are different conditions comes under the category of exceptional children. Children in each category are very unique in their needs and abilities. So, while we are adapting curriculum for students from a particular category, we should consider the unique nature of each category. Let us see the children with physical and sensory impairment. Visual impairment. Visual impairment includes both low vision children and blind children. Low vision children need environmental adaptations, preferential seating, and material adaptations like large print and magnifying glasses. For blind children, braille books or braille related materials are used. Hearing impairment. Provide written or pictorial direction. Use specific teaching techniques like finger spelling, lip reading, and sign language, and also made environmental adaptations. For locomotor disability, the child with locomotor disability mainly needs environmental support like removal of architectural barriers. Cognitive impairments. Children comes under this category have cognitive problems from a range of mild to profound. Intellectual disability. Children with intellectual disability have significant impairment in intellectual functioning. In most of the cases, especially moderate, severe, and profound, they need a special curriculum or a functional curriculum. Learning disability. Learning disabled children have average or above average intelligence, but due to the processing problem, their learning is affected. Autism. They have problems in communication and social interaction. They are visual thinkers. They need visual communication than oral communication. Emotional and behavioral disorders. These children having problems in learning because of emotional disturbances. Children with cognitive impairments may have attention problem, so they need a calm or less distracted place, preferentially seated near the teacher. Special teaching strategies and techniques are needed. Involve them in group activities, help to develop social skills. In inclusive classroom, all children need accommodation or modification in one way or the other, especially the special needs children, and through they can actively participate in a least restrictive environment and access the general curriculum. Curriculum adaptation is a process of modification of curriculum according to the learning needs of the students. Curriculum adaptations include both accommodation and modification, which provide the child equal access learning and also an individualized instruction if it is needed. Curriculum adaptation is not only for children with disabilities but also for all children who have different learning needs in a general education classroom.